Welcome everybody. This is not all things SOPPA, but it's one thing SOPPA. It's about using the Illinois NDPA agreement for implementing a SOPPA solution. This is not the only agreement that you can use, but it is a good example of something that we can use and something that's been successful across the nation for other people as well. My name is Chris Worley. I'm the Director of Technology Services for the Learning Technology Center. The Learning Technology Center is a state of Illinois Board of Education grant program funded by the State Board of Education, where we work with schools on all things ed tech. So one of the things that we're doing is providing some assistance for dealing with SOPPA and implementing solutions to SOPPA. And one of those solutions is the Illinois NDPA, as well as the database system that these two projects come from the Student Data Privacy Consortium, which is an international organization. In the United States, it's made up of 32 different alliances from states around the United States, one of those being Illinois, and the LTC is the lead alliance for Illinois, which makes these projects available to all school districts in Illinois. So this slideshow is available to you. We also have Tuesday afternoons, we have All Things SOPPA, which we talk about a little bit of everything with regards to SOPPA. And then also you can find recordings on the YouTube playlists as well. So one of the things I'd like to do is just get a general sense for who's here today. And when I say this is my first time attending, anything that has to do with SOPPA or All Things SOPPA or the database stuff that we did last week, those types of things. So if you would go to slido.com and use the code Z972, that'll help us just get a sense for who's here today. Also, if you want to put in the chat what your position at your school district is, whether you're a superintendent, whether you're a curriculum person, whether you're a technology person, librarian, teacher, media specialist, whatever those different titles might be, you could throw that in the chat as well. And then also just one of the reasons for using Slido is just to get you into the question and answer functionality of Slido so that we can help provide a question and answer location for that as well. Welcome, Abe. It's like a support group kind of for SOPPA. Welcome, Tanya and Jason. And it feels a little bit like Romper Room, but I am almost 50, so some of you may not know what Romper Room is. So I appreciate everybody being here, and we'll see what we can do as far as getting you a little bit more understanding of what the Illinois NDPA is. So, all right. And we'll get to the questions and answers as we go here. So the reason we're all here is because of SOPPA. Some of you may be part of this conversation for the first time. Ultimately, what SOPPA is having data privacy agreements for each of the applications that you're using in your school district, software applications, websites, those types of things that store student data, use student data in some way. The data agreement that we're sharing with you is just one solution. You can, obviously, there's lots of ways of getting data privacy agreements, but we'll show you what the benefits of doing this is. As far as background information on SOPPA, this data privacy webpage on the LTC website will provide you with additional information, whether it's conversations with administration, those types of things. Those resources are here for you to look at. So a couple things to get out today is one, this data privacy page, and then 2 is going to be, sorry, I thought I had it right up the top, is this ISPA page, which basically is the alliance page for managing everything that you're doing with SOPPA. So the data privacy is kind of the why and what we're doing. The ISPA website is how to do it. And so one of the things that will be posted on here after today, later in the week, will be this webinar. Will be part of the playlist that we have available to you to utilize beyond today. So this website is ultimately the starting point for everything that you're going to do to satisfy the SOPPA legislation. One of those things is to join the ISPA, and that ultimately gets you access to the database that we talked about last Monday during our webinar. We talk about that on All Things SOPPA, and then we're actually doing another webinar next Monday as well. Same thing that I did last Monday, but just digging into the database and how to use it and what all the different menus mean and all those types of things. So if you haven't joined the ISPA yet, do that. And then just other things on this web page that are available to you. The data privacy agreement that we're going to talk about is here. I'll talk a little bit about this redlined Exhibit G and what that may mean to you. And then just getting started documents, the YouTube playlists are here. And then also reasonable security practices for your district is part of the SOPPA conversation as well. And then all the events that we are running through the LTC are available for registration too. Even if you register and you get the wrong Zoom link, it does help us to get you the right Zoom link if you are registered. So so that would be for getting started, and beyond today will be helpful to you. So going back, just to give you an idea of things that are why this Illinois NDPA agreement is, or why this Illinois NDPA is important. Illinois NDPA stands for the Illinois National Data Privacy Agreement. This is a project that was developed by the Student Data Privacy Consortium. The NDA portion came out in July of 2020, and we'll talk about what that portion of it is. And then the Illinois portion of it is Exhibit G, which we'll also talk about. So these are just statistics from the database that's part of the Illinois NDPA, and these are not updated for this week. I actually saw there were over 3,000 agreements going into this morning. So these signed DPAs are why we're here today, to understand how the Illinois NDPA can work in that. Most of these signed DPAs are in some way the Illinois NDPA. There's a handful that are one-off agreements that may be between a district and a vendor that they've had in place for a few years. Some districts were proactive in getting student data privacy agreements in the past, and so those may be uploaded in there just so that they have that all their agreements in the same place. Then these other agreements are what we're calling originating and subscribing agreements. And that'll be clearer to you when we get done today. And as far as these statistics go, the 159 unique districts with DPAs, that's mean 159 districts have done that, have gone out and gotten an originating agreement. But all 2,341 of these agreements don't all belong to those originating school districts. So, and you'll understand that relationship by the end of the day as well. The originating DPAs, that means that there should be 303 originating agreements that are between one school district and the vendor. All these other agreements, so around 1,900 agreements and more than that now, are what we're calling subscribing agreements, or they're standalone. And so as we go on, we'll understand that and get that picture clearer. Another thing we do during the All Things SOPPA is talk about what the originating agreements are. So as we talk through today and talk through the Illinois NDPA and the originating agreements, this is just an example of over the past week from April 20th to April 27th, those were the originating agreements that were signed by school districts across Illinois, allowing other school districts to subscribe to those particular agreements. And so just there's a couple examples here. AptiveG Thrill Share, that's the school notification system that goes with the AptiveG website. SysCloud is a backup system for all things Google and Office 365s, and then Pear Deck is one here as well. So those should be some familiar applications that school districts are using. So in order to understand this agreement and what it's used for, this is kind of taking the cake out of the oven as it's already done. So this is an example of a school's website. So Olympia School District, Sean Mullins has made a lot of videos for us on the playlists that I referred to earlier. So check those out as far as the how-tos and the process for making this happen. But this is a not completed list, but it's a list of the resources that school district's using, and that's through the use of the database. So this is the database. But the actual agreements that we're talking about today are listed here on this webpage. So if I look at this agreement, this is going to be the Illinois NDPA. So this is Illinois NDPA version 1A. And if I scroll down through this, I can see that the agreement is here for ThrillShare and Mount Pulaski. So this is an originating agreement that was originally done by Mount Pulaski School District and AptiveG ThrillShare. And then, and we're going to talk through all these parts here. I just want to kind of scroll down and show you the length of the agreement. So that's the agreement. And then the subscribing process, which is what, when we get into that within the Illinois NDPA, the subscribing process allows another school, in this case, Sean Mullins at Olympia School District, signed on to the full agreement between Mount Pulaski and AptiveG to take that full agreement and allow Olympia School District to subscribe to that, piggyback on that agreement. So you'll hear the term subscribing, and you'll also hear the term piggybacking. So the Illinois NDPA has the functionality to allow districts to subscribe to full agreements that were entered into by other school districts. So to help you better understand that agreement, I've put together a draft of, and this is available to you. You can add comments to this at this point. So as we're going through this, if I'm saying something that doesn't match up with something here, definitely put that into that document so I can update that and make that a little bit more clear. But this is meant for school districts across Illinois to be able to use as kind of a checklist to understand what the Illinois NDPA is and how it benefits you and how it can work. So if there's things that are wrong in here, please provide that feedback, and we'll make this a more usable document. But this is kind of the outline for today as well, to go through this NDPA agreement. All right, so if we go back to the resources webpage for ISPA, this is the document that you can use as a originating agreement school. So if the agreement is not available already for subscribing or piggybacking, this is where you would get the original agreement. And we're not going to really talk too much about the actual process for uploading agreements and all that kind of stuff. I just want to go through the agreement and help you understand what it is we're looking at when we're looking at the Illinois NDPA. The other document here is the red line Exhibit G. So when this agreement was originally done, the NDPA agreement, and it's good to understand this history because you're going to see version 1 and you're going to see version 1A in the database. So when version 1 came out in October, we took the NDPA agreement that came from the Student Privacy Consortium, the SDPC, that was originally done in July of 2020. We took it to Robin Schwartz, who made our initial Exhibit G, which is the Exhibit G is primarily for Illinois schools. In our case, it's for Illinois schools to show the Illinois laws that vendors need to agree to when they're signing this agreement. Other states will use Exhibit G for their state as well. So as this document started going out and being looked at by other legal teams around the state, we had it reviewed again by the Illinois Association of School Boards and the Illinois Council of School Attorneys, who made changes, and those changes are all in red, which ultimately became version 1A of the NDPA. So if you have, if you take the Illinois NDPA to your school attorney, take version 1A to them, but also let them know that there is a version 1 and that there may be opportunities for subscribing to version 1 as well. Some districts attorneys are saying only subscribe to version 1A. Others are saying it's okay to subscribe to version 1. So that's up to your attorney to let you know what version you can subscribe to. The other thing that you need to determine, so you do that first, and then the other thing you need to determine is who's going to sign those agreements. So these are legal documents. You don't want anybody and everybody signing these agreements within your district. You want it to be a superintendent or director of curriculum, director of technology, assistant superintendent, somebody along those lines that will have the legal ability to sign these agreements, and that would be posted in your board policies according to policy 7345. That's part of the press policy from the Illinois Association of School Boards. So make sure that you have that person set up to do that. And again, that's part of the upload process into the database and the signing off of agreements in the database system. All right, so this checklist is what we're going to kind of run down through inside the agreement. So I want to pull up that agreement. So I'm going to stop the share for a second and share a different screen here. So within Acrobat Reader, it's recommended that you use either Acrobat or Acrobat Reader for manipulating the agreements. So the first thing you'll notice is that, and I'm going to go through this for two different purposes. One is I'm going to go through it as a originating district would look at it, but also as a subscribing district, you want to look at this agreement and make sure that what you're subscribing to, and I know those are terms that maybe are unclear to you, but just understand that it'll be clearer once you follow up with additional information, and it's kind of beyond the scope of what we can do within the hour today. But so I'm looking at it from both both lenses, looking at it as an originating district and looking at it as a subscribing district, the pieces of the agreement and what they mean and how they work for you as a district. So the initial thing is just who this initial district is that's entering into an agreement, and then what the vendor, what company it is that you're entering into the agreement. So using Acrobat Reader or Acrobat Pro is going to be the easiest way to fill out this agreement. You'll notice that there's footers for what version it is and specifically what's changed from the original 1.0 agreement. Filling out the address information here with the city, state, and zip for each vendor and for the school district. So you just fill out that information and move on down through the agreement. The other things within this agreement, this is just a way to really take a quick look at what's available for you in the agreement. So on page 2, Exhibit G, which is the Illinois specific laws that vendors will have to agree to, is always going to be checked in our agreement. So there should be no reason that this agreement being used should never have that check mark. So that should always be check marked. We'll talk about a little bit about Exhibit H. Exhibit H is an optional exhibit that is there for additional terms that either the school district needs or the vendor needs. Ideally, we want to use this as little as possible because the idea of this agreement is that we have this reviewed by our legal team, that this agreement is being used by other school districts that have done the same thing. And if we go to vendor ABC or ABCD or 2 or 3, we're taking that same agreement to them. And so then we know that if there's nothing in Exhibit H, that agreement should be the same across school districts in Illinois. Every time that something gets added to Exhibit H, legal teams or legal firms are going to have to get involved and check off on all those things that are in that Exhibit H. So if we can use Exhibit H as little as possible, that's great. Obviously, there's going to be times where it's going to be necessary, but it has to be reviewed at some level by legal to make sure that that is okay beyond what is originally there. And that goes from both a originating process, so as you're going through and you're getting an original agreement with someone, but also during the subscribing process, if that's checked and there's an Exhibit H, you want to make sure that your legal team is okay with you subscribing to that agreement. With that being said, if there is an Exhibit E, which is also referred to as the general offer of terms, that the vendor is saying it's okay for other school districts to subscribe to this agreement as it is. So if Exhibit H is checked and Exhibit E is checked, then make sure that you as a subscribing school are okay with what the original district agreed to in the full document, which includes Exhibit H. Ideally, we want to limit that as much as we can. We're not going to make any changes to any other part of the agreement. So any changes in the agreement, in any terms of the agreement, have to be in Exhibit H. And so if you're changing those terms, then your legal is going to have to get involved with it. As we scroll down through here, page 3, again, just signatures of the school districts. The document should somewhat autofill as you go through here. So that is autofilling based on the LEA and the provider from page 1. Also, I think there's a date field that gets propagated through here. Beginning on page 4 is the standard clauses of the NDPA agreement. So as you scroll down through here, all these things have to do with the NDPA agreement and what is kind of standard across the nation as far as NDPA. The value to vendors with this process. So there's a lot of value in the subscribing process for us as school districts in Illinois, being able to subscribe off of other districts. But there's also value to vendors in the sense that um, from a national level, they can go from California to Wisconsin to Utah to Massachusetts and see this NDPA document. And majority of the content within this agreement is the NDPA. So they are seeing the same thing from state to state. The only thing that they're going to see different is that Exhibit G. So when they use when they go to another state, they can use that Exhibit G. So all of these articles, pages 4 through 9, are the NDPA. And so those are things talking about transferring of data, ending of agreement, termination of your agreement, those types of things. So a lot of legal jargon terms in there that is important to your lawyer and to your school and to the safety of your students. But none of this should be changed as far as your agreement goes. So whether you're an originating school or subscribing school, with all things being uh, a part of the NDPA, none of that portion of it should change. When we get down into the exhibits, the Exhibit A should be a description of services for that particular vendor. So in the case of something like Renaissance that does accelerated reader and Freckle and some different things, those may be listed here for this particular agreement. When you come down into Exhibit B, this is where you would check for different, or the vendor would check. Again, this should, and I should mention this too, and I mentioned it in the checklist. Originally, this should be done by the vendor. So whatever the vendor is listing as description of services, you just want to double check that as both the originating district and also a subscribing district to make sure that what you're using is in that list of description of services. And then the same thing with data, making sure the data that is checked off here is being used or is at least a superset of the data that you're using. So if you're not using place of birth or date of birth, but the originating agreement may say that they are, I think that's going to be okay. You're just not, you don't have to supply that information to any district, and you can check that off in the database later on. Otherwise, you would have to enter into another agreement with different Exhibit B showing different data. The one case where I would say that that would be the case that you would want a different agreement is if all they had checked was date of birth, but you are giving them gender and date of birth, then you would want to have, so if those were missing on the Exhibit B, once you went to either after the vendor checked it and you said, no, we also give you gender and date of birth, then you would want to make that as the originating district. But if you're a subscribing district and this is all that's checked, I would be I would just question whether or not you want to subscribe to this particular agreement. You may want to enter into a new agreement that makes sure that you check off on all those things that you are sending to them if it's more than what is there originally in the originating agreement. And you can see all the different things here. You can also use this agreement for if you want to enter into a data privacy agreement with no data being shared. So if there's nothing checked up here, you can also use this agreement to ultimately say, okay, certain vendor, you're not, you don't have any of our data, but if you ever do, then we'll have to have a data agreement. This is not necessary, but some vendors may choose to do that just so that they have something there. Some school districts may want to try to do that as well, just so you have a data privacy agreement that says, no, there's no data there to keep private. Exhibit C is just definition, so nothing really to look at there other than just for your understanding, read through that and know what those terms mean. Exhibit D, there's lots of questions around Exhibit D. Ultimately, this is not a exhibit that needs to be filled out right at the time of the agreement. Some districts may choose to do that. Some legal teams may choose to do that. But ultimately, it's not. It's meant to be kind of a placeholder that you know where this form's at. It's part of the agreement. It's there for you to use when you're no longer using that particular vendor and you want to either have them delete your data or transfer the data back to you in some form that you want to use. So that's particularly what that Exhibit D is for. Exhibit E, again, should be filled out by the vendor. So the vendor should be saying that we're okay with this. They supply an email address. That email address is going to be used for the subscribing process. So that's a very important piece. So you as the originating district need to make sure that this is filled out at the top. But then as the subscribing district, you're going to rely on what the originating district did to make sure that this works for you. So it's important that we do it properly, provide the email address, this is for the vendor to sign. So they've signed this. The bottom of this should remain blank. So there's no autofill in this part of it. This is going to be completed by the subscribing school. So the originating school district does not fill out this part, should be blank. And also this page should be either printed out and used for uploading or save it as a separate PDF file. So this one page gets uploaded for those districts to subscribe to, and I can go back and show you that again, how that is necessary. Exhibit F is the security that the provider, the vendor is using, the operator. Lots of terms there that all mean the same thing. Ultimately, I feel like this should be something that they check off, or they provide something in Exhibit H that would say this is the security process that we're using. Because one of the things within the SOPPA law is that vendors are required to be using reasonable security. It's probably not something that it's not in the law that it's part of the written agreement, but this is a way for you to verify that they are at least using one of these frameworks for security, or providing something else that would say that they are providing secure resources for their stuff. But again, it's not necessarily a make or break as far as the agreement goes. And again, that's something you can check with your legal attorney with as well. Exhibit G is the state terms for Illinois. And for other states, it would be for their particular states. But ultimately, this is all the Illinois laws. Again, something for you to read through, something for you to know what it is that you're entering into an agreement with as well. But none of this stuff should be changed necessarily as part of the agreement, because this is stuff that was developed by the Illinois Association of School Boards and that Illinois Council of School Attorneys for the Illinois portion of the terms and services that we want to be a part of this data privacy agreement. And then we come down to Exhibit H, and that offers the opportunity and again, some states have actually taken the Exhibit H out. We're not necessarily to that point because we feel like there may be things that we don't know about at this point that may need to be a part of that. And as we see commonalities between Exhibit H's, um, as we grow this database of agreements, then it may be something we want to include in the Exhibit G at some point. But for now, anything that's not in the NDPA agreement, not part of the Exhibit G portion of the terms, should be put in Exhibit H. It shouldn't be redlined as part of the regular agreement. It should only be put in this box, and this box is fillable, and you can add things to that as well. So if we look at, we'll just take a couple examples of those agreements and just look through them and look at the checklist again to understand this process. And let me get back to sharing and we'll answer a few questions as we go here. And I want to share my screen. Okay, so again, just additional information that we've shared during all things SOPPA, the Illinois Council of School Attorneys, those types of things, the Exhibit G. So all this information is part of the slideshow, part of the things we talked about. This kind of summarizes a lot of the things I talked about. So going back to the checklist, just a few other things that are on here that may be, and we'll go through the database and just look at some examples of what is there and just to help understand that subscribing and originating distinction, what's between the two. So under other at the bottom, the file name, this is important when you're saving the document for upload into the system, that you change the name of it. For one, if you upload it as the Illinois NDPA version 1A, that will actually overwrite anything that's there. So if you use this naming convention, it's probably going to be better for you in the long run. It's going to be better for everybody else. But those file names actually show up when you're looking and you're hovering over links. So just using the naming convention, application name, district name, and then version number, whether it's 1 or 1A, would be helpful. And it may be something we go back and update that at a later time for those that are already there. And then the Exhibit E, if you're uploading the Exhibit E as the originator. And so these are really 2 steps that are meant for the originating district. So if you're the originating district, using these file name conventions will be helpful in the long run. The only difference between that one page for the Exhibit E is including the _E there. Also, don't use punctuation other than the underscore and the dash. I've had some cases where asterisk, or not asterisks, but hashtags for like district number 15 have caused issues with the upload and different things. And obviously, ultimately in 2021, those types of file names shouldn't make a difference, but in the database system that we're using, it does. So if you can avoid using those, you'll get less errors. And then the other thing that as far as an originating district, if you're uploading agreements, sometimes in the SDPC is working on error messages to make this process better so that you actually understand what's happening. But when you're uploading that original agreement, if that original 23-page document, if the file size is too large, it will just come right back to the screen and not really tell you anything. So using either the compress feature in Adobe or going to this website and uploading that document to compress it will be helpful. Obviously, the more originating agreements, if they're too large, we're dealing with that across the United States. So it's all kind of linked together. If all those agreements are 40 and 50 meg size documents or 15 and 20 meg size documents, that adds up over a long period of time. So, and just even like upload times and system time and all that kind of stuff makes a big difference as well. So if you get to the point where you're uploading an originating agreement, know that if it comes right back to the screen, that you may have to compress that file. And if you're running into any errors or anything like that with the system, you can email me to help with that process as well and remind you of that if necessary. All right, so let's just make sure all these other things, application name. All right. So one of the functionalities that makes this process work and makes that the Illinois NDPA agreement work for us is the subscribing process. So if we log into the site and I log in as a school district, this is the screen that you should see when you log in. Under your district agreements, and this is just going to be a real quick explanation of this. I'm not doing this to try to get you to understand this part. That's actually can be done through the YouTube videos where we've done this. And then also next week, if you have specific questions on the database, I'm going to go through all these menu choices and talk more about all these things. But the auto exhibitee creator and how this relates to the Illinois NDPA. So if you look at the auto exhibitee creator, there's going to be a portion in here or buttons in here that allow you to create exhibitees. The only way to create an exhibitee is to have used the Illinois NDPA agreement as the originating agreement and had the vendor sign the exhibitee. And then the originating district is going to upload that by adding an agreement here. Again, that's for, we've got videos and stuff, how to do that, and we can explain that. But I'm just trying to explain the usage of the system. So once they've uploaded it, it'll be here in the exhibitee creator. So there's 343 originating agreements in the system right now. Some of those may be version 1, some of them may be version 1A, but they're for different applications within the system. Some of them, there may be duplicates. So that 343 can be a little bit misleading. But if we're looking at the agreement, we can see that this was originally a 1.0 agreement. So that's something to look at on the checklist. So this was a 1.0 agreement. So if it's not a 1.0 agreement, and that's the only thing you can subscribe to as a district because your legal team said you won't be able to use this agreement. So you need to look at the agreement. There is some discrepancies right now. Not with this particular case. So this one was uploaded as a V1 and it is a V1. There may be some discrepancies where it was uploaded as a 1A, but it says, it may say that it's a 1A, but the actual document is probably, it could be a 1.0 if it was uploaded after we converted to the 1A. If you see things like that and are confused, definitely reach out to me and I'll try to explain it better why that is until we get it fixed. So the first thing to do is to check the version number before you subscribe to anything. For some reason, this document looks like it was changed. It should have that check mark in there. I don't know how, I don't actually know how people change that document. So that's interesting. Let's see if the exhibit G is down here. This might be a good example of one of those things that you're going to be confused and you need to email me that you're confused so I can help either clean up the database or clear up the confusion as well. So again, it looks like this agreement was uploaded with multiple Exhibit A's. So this is Exhibit A for ABC Mouse e-learning. This is an Exhibit B for ABC Mouse, which is okay to do. It just makes it hard for districts to understand what's going on here if this is how this is done. This is a bad example. Should have been better prepared. I'm gonna go to my standbys here. So I know that East Peoria just uploaded one this morning. So if I look at this originating agreement, sorry, this adds to confusion. This is a 1.0 agreement entered into by Peoria District 86 and Companion Corporation. As I scroll down through here, I see that Exhibit G is checked and Exhibit E is checked. Signatures are all there. This should be the NDPA agreement, so I can scroll kind of past that because nothing should be changed. Exhibit A just says it's for textbook tracker, so that's okay. Exhibit B, I would look at the data elements that are here just to make sure that those line up with your school district. Exhibit C is the definitions. I can kind of just skip back past that. This was signed by the vendor, but that's okay. It's just there. This is the Exhibit E document, so we can just look and see the email was provided. It's by the district. It's signed and printed or signed by the vendor, left blank at the bottom. This isn't checked, that's okay. Exhibit G should be there. And Exhibit H, there's no changes, so that's good. And then if I look at this Exhibit E, that's what we're going to do when we sign this. So it's blank here at the bottom, so that's the way it should be. And then when I click on Create Exhibit E, it actually will sign that document and put it in your database. And I'm just going to do that. No harm, no foul. You would fill this out for your district, what information you want to appear on that resource listing that I first showed you originally. When I click on agree, it takes my account information. And again, this will be more thoroughly explained at other times, but it'll take my account information and put it on the bottom of that agreement. So if I look at my agreements now under manage agreements, and that was textbook tracker, I can look at this Exhibit E and it shows that this was the original by East Peoria. And then down here, it takes my account information and puts it as part of that PDF. And then ultimately, Mike should have got an email from me with this attachment saying that I'm agreeing to the same agreement that East Peoria has agreed to. Obviously, that's not general practice because I'm not using that application. That's not the way it should be. But, and then also showing you the resource listing. So under tools, customize resource listing. This is the one that I have for my school district. So here's that agreement. Textbook tracker is showing up on my webpage. And if I look at the agreement here at the top, it's going to be the full agreement. So that's the agreement that I agreed to when I signed on to that Exhibit E and made that part of the process. So that's how we use the Illinois NDPA. Those are the pieces of the Illinois NDPA. And at this point, I will open it up for questions. If you need clarification on certain things, definitely continue to ask questions. And then also we can follow up with other of our events as we go here. So I still want to present, but I want to go back to question and answer. And a lot of these questions, again, are part of the SOPPA, all things SOPPA. We do question and answer as we go in those events as well. I'm going to exit out of full screen. Hopefully you can still see that all right. So, and then I'll also, if there was any questions in the chat that I didn't get to, I see that there's only one, so that's good. We'll see if it's part of the Slido as well. So as we answer these questions, we'll just kind of wrap up with that part of it. If you do have additional questions, all my contact information is in the All Things SOPPA slide deck. Again, I'll throw that in the chat one more time for you. Attend as many things as you need to, ask as many questions as you need to. You're not the only one in this process. There's thousands of school districts in Illinois, both between school districts and special ed co-ops and alternative schools, and even some private schools are doing this process as well. So if you've got a question, they've got a question, and that's what the office hour type presentations for on Tuesdays. So check back with that as well. So we'll go through these questions and wrap up. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your understanding with the goofiness of the Zoom link as well. So as we look here, no signature field for the LEA or the company on Exhibit D of the Illinois NDPA 1. The document is password corrected and can't be changed. Can this be corrected? Yeah, that's something I can look into. Ultimately, that document does not need to be signed as part of the process, but I can put those things on there and look at that. And then if they wanted to be used, they could be used. And the reason, and going back to, this is probably something I need to put into the presentation, is the reason for the password protected is pretty evident in the one agreement that was posted there earlier, in the sense that we don't want people changing the structure of the Illinois NDPA agreement because of that subscribing process. We want it to be as duplicatable from district to district to district to district. So ultimately, with the example that I pulled up, the way that that probably could be done or should be done is that it should be a separate agreement for each one of those things, with a different agreement for each one of them. And if we do it right the first time, it's going to be better in the long run. That may have been easier for the vendor. It may have been easier for the school district. Ultimately, it makes it harder on the other 800 and some schools if they possibly utilize that agreement to understand what is going on and what's there. And all they want to do is subscribe to ABC Maps, but now they're subscribing to all these other tools as well. And just be aware that what you do as an originating district flows down into other the subscribing process. So we'll make sure that we look at some of these different things, and that's why the document's password protected. And I will look at fixing that particular issue with making sure that that's fillable and available for that process. Okay, so James is answering that question, was answered. Reducing the file size worked. And again, I'm part of the national project team that's looking at this registry and looking at the database tools. And that's one of the suggestions that's there in their list of enhancements and features to update is, one, an error message, but two, seeing if there's a way that they can reduce the size on their end. So when the document gets uploaded, it gets reduced automatically and available, put in the database as the reduced size. So again, trying to utilize tools that have been around and used, and just making sure that those tools get updated and used. Some companies state that they have already filled out an agreement with a district, but when I search the database, I do not find. Yeah, that came up the other day in a conversation as well. And I think it's just that the district hasn't uploaded that original agreement at this point. So if that is the case, if we can get further information and you can pass that along to me, as far as if the vendor knows who the district was, I wouldn't necessarily want every school that contacted the vendor to then reach out to that school district. But if that's something I can do, we'd be glad to try to help with that process and kind of be in the middle of that, so that it's only one person contacting the school district that may have entered into an agreement but just hasn't got it posted yet, and see if we can help with that if they don't know how to do it, or if they need some help or whatever the case may be. So that could be happening.
I'm sorry, Chris, can I,
Yep.
it was Arlington Heights. They had a whole bunch posted like a week ago, and I went on vacation, and when I came back, because I actually had downloaded or some of them like mealtime and stuff, and
Okay.
now they're all gone. I can't even find Arlington Heights, anything on them.
Okay. Let me do some troubleshooting on that and see if I can. And who was that? I didn't see your unmute.
Oh, James Cole, sorry.
Okay. Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good. And James, if you'll send me an email, just so that I have the specifics as far as what you know and what application it was and stuff like that, that would be helpful as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. Can we still utilize originating agreements that are missing Exhibit D to create subscribing agreements? I believe so. I don't think there's any reason why that piece of it is not there. The other thing that I wouldn't worry about at this point is the Exhibit F, if that's blank. Ultimately, if you are seeing things that don't appear like it is something that you want to subscribe to. So if the originating district uploaded something that doesn't seem like it's something that you can subscribe to, ultimately that's probably the case for other districts too. And so reach out to us and let me know about those situations so that we can begin to troubleshoot those and see if we can make it clearer and easier for every district to subscribe to those. If there is a data breach, will the company notify all those districts who have piggybacked on the original agreement? That should be the case. So by subscribing to that, that's what you're doing, is entering into an agreement with them. So they should be able to contact you with that. Also, they should have your information as part of their, as far as your purchase or those types of things too. But the data privacy agreement should put that stuff in place. And then that's also something we can communicate out from a database standpoint. We can also see that you've subscribed to those particular agreements. So if somebody does get contacted, we should be able to contact everybody. So again, that's going to be one of those collaboration pieces that we will have because of this database. Whereas if everybody was off doing it on their own, they would be on their own with that process. I think it'll be enhanced with this database and the functionality of the piggybacking, but also just being able to store your agreements within this database will also help us communicate out to districts as well. Does the originating district need to upload the Exhibit E separately for download by subscribing districts? Yes. Ultimately, the originating district should post when they're, let me just real quickly show you the process. And this is in the YouTube playlist as well of how to add an originating agreement. But when you go to your district agreements, add new agreement, the first step is, do you have an agreement? Yes. I'm going to be the originating school district. Yes. Pick the resource or pick the NDPA. This is why some of them that may be uploaded, maybe ones, but they're still say 1A, because we don't have the option to upload one anymore after we updated the system. Even though somebody may have started the negotiation process with one and actually has that agreement in place. So that can be rectified eventually once we clear some things up. Pick the resource, date approved, date expires, put that email in there for the Exhibit E. And then this is where you upload the full document. So application, district name, upload the full document. In this case, I'm going to pick one just because if I don't, I'm just going to pull it the blank one up here just so I can get to the next screen. And I'm going to pick today's date. The date expires should be 3 years from the date that the agreement was entered into. That's for subscribing purposes ultimately. You can pick the grade levels and the subject areas. Anything in green is going to be public to that public listing, public resource listing. And again, I'm running through this quickly, but I just want to get to the next screen to show you the place where they upload that blank document. So it's uploading my document. This is where they would upload that 1-page agreement. So it should be, actually, we need to change this. It should be _E. But upload that 1-page document that the Exhibit E is, the top is filled out, the bottom is blanked, so that when you go to the Exhibit E creator, it puts your information at the bottom of that blank document when you're subscribing to it. So the top is what the originating district did. It should be a blank document for people to subscribe to using that.